so far away. Doesn't anybody stay in one place anymore? It would be so fine to see your face at my door. It doesn't help to know you're just time away.
Hello there, unclear thinkers, and welcome to the Anthony Goodrow Dulcet Tone Hour. Well,
You
actually,
like that song?
yeah, who doesn't? But it's actually unclear thinking, gang. It's time for another one. I showed up to do a podcast. God knows what Goodrow showed up to do, but I'm sure he'll tell you.
Well, that's one of those songs that I love that song, and there's a good reason for it. And that is, whenever I hear that song or any song off of Carole King's legendary album Tapestry, I think of a house I lived in when I was young. And as a matter of fact, I was 4, and they're among some of my earliest memories as a conscious human being. And there's a few things I remember about living in that house, which we lived at for about a year. And my sister, who owned that album and played it over and over, apparently, still lived with us. So I'm putting it right at, based on when we moved to the next house, at about 4 years old. So that whenever I think of that song, that's where I go back to.
Nostalgia-inducing.
Yes, very much so. It's of course, there are hundreds of songs like that for me, but that one, that and, like I said, songs from that album take me to that place.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody's probably got a list of tunes that take them back, so to speak. The older we get, the more we wallow in nostalgia.
Yeah, it seems like it takes us to happier places, maybe when we're stressed or not so happy. One suggestion, possibly.
Yeah, I'm currently, struggling is the right word, but I'm experiencing a lot of nostalgia. As you well know, I'm preparing to move.
Yes.
So this entire house is being broken down into bits and pieces and stuffed into boxes and packing taped, hermetically sealed and awaiting for movers. And as I get to the bottom of closets that haven't seen the light of day in 17 years, I keep finding things that, oh my God, I still have this, and oh geez, look at this thing. And so, I mean, sure, I'm excited about moving into a newer house, a larger house, a more comfortable house. My wife and I are a little bit cramped for space in this house, and so I'm excited in that respect and looking real forward to it. But at the same time, I've lived in this house for more than a third of my life, and I'm finding things and having moments where it's a little bit. Pain is too strong a word, but it's a bittersweet feeling. I've had good times and bad times in this house, and they all make up what I am, and it's going to be a strange feeling to leave it. So I get what you mean about things taking you back.
Well, that's probably the best, besides getting a new house and getting sort of a starting a new feeling in a new house. Packing the stuff to move is probably the best part, simply for that reason, because the times we moved, you get a box out and you go, well, what's in this box? Do I want to keep this or get rid of it? And you go through stuff and then you say, well, why did I keep this, or what is this? And some of the stuff you go, wow, I forgot I even had that.
Yeah, I came across a little outfit that my mommy made for me when I was 8 years old, and I was in the Cub Scouts, and my Cub Scout troop portrayed the British soldiers in that year, the 1975 local Independence Day parade. We were the enemy. We were the British soldiers. And my mommy made me a little redcoats outfit, and I had the trifold hat, and I had the leggings, and I had a toy musket, and I mean the musket and the trifold hat have long gone, but the outfit was stuck in the bottom of that closet. I don't remember Mom giving it to me, but apparently she did. And hell, I'm 40 years older than I was then. It's not like I can put the thing back on, but I can't get rid of that.
No, absolutely not. You would never want to get rid of that.
No, something as silly as that. I mean,
well, just like we collect things and put them in our closet over time and not to be found again until we're ready to move, I think we collect nostalgic moments in our mind and we associate those experiences with that time or place, and it seems like we tend to hang on to more strongly to memories of when that time and place was positive. Like the house I grew up in, I kind of have mixed feelings about that because I ride by it from time to time, and I look at it, and it's really old house. The one thing that comes to mind is the yard is so much smaller than I remember, and I do remember playing football in the front yard with my brother, and I think, how in the world did we ever play football in that yard when it's maybe 40 feet long? And I don't know if that's an exaggeration or not, because I can't judge distances very well. I just watch my golf game. But
well, you were smaller back then, so of course everything looked bigger.
Right.
Oh, we were all
But
smaller back then. Well, one could make the case that the entire quote-unquote pop culture movement phenomenon, the concept of pop culture, that everybody, of course, different generations, they have different pop culture references, but you could make the point that that's the draw of pop culture is nostalgia. You and I are children of the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, so we're drawn to those things, and we revel in them and make a point of experiencing things that are relevant to the music, film, television, even books, the things that we enjoy from that time frame. So, and it's all because we remember enjoying those things the first time, and when we want to relive it, it's at some level.
Oh, I agree, and just maybe just a time in general, not necessarily a specific event. Sometimes that's so, but not necessarily a specific event, but just where you were in life at the time.
Yeah, well, it's an anchor to take you back to a mindset or a focal point.
And as much as we love nostalgia today and have a good grasp of its value, that wasn't always the case, as evidenced by the article from the New York Times that I've shared with you this week.
That was very educational. I had no clue about the negative connotation nostalgia had amongst supposedly educated folk, 300-400 years ago. That was news to me.
And the word itself comes from the Greek nostos, meaning to return home, and algos, meaning the accompanying pain. It was coined by a 17th century psychologist, Johannes Hofer, and he considered it a psychological disorder, even calling it a neurological disease of essentially demonic cause.
Ew. That's not demonic. That's a little harsh. Jeez.
That's pretty strong, isn't it?
I mean, I know everybody was a lot more tough love 400 years ago than they are now, but I mean, in most cases that was probably a good thing, but damn. I mean, you can get some poor gal listening to her Boys to Men playlist on Spotify and you get called out for witchcraft or something.
Hey, I wonder what they did when they caught somebody having a moment of nostalgia.
I mean, the Salem witch trials all over again.
By order of decree by the Commonwealth of Virginia, I hereby find Mrs. Jones guilty of being mad as evidenced by her witness listening to Boys to Men for hours on end and reminiscing about her high school prom of years go by.
I'm sorry. I just feel a little down, and listening to my old jam playlist and thinking about the old days picks me up sometimes. I don't understand. Why am I strapped to this dunking chair? She's a witch! Burn her! Burn her!
No, Norman. That trial was last week. She's not a witch. She's just mad.
Okay. Well, she's a real downer! Dunk her! Dunk her!
Mrs. Jones, you are hereby sentenced to a swift dunking in water.
Well, that's it?
Well, it's very cold water. You will not like it one bit.
Shoot.
Modern studies have shown that most people experience nostalgia at least once a week, and half experience it 3 or 4 times a week.
I'm definitely meeting my quota of late, aren't I?
Yeah, you and me both.
Well, I'm moving. What you got going on that's got you thinking about, or is it just old age in general?
I think I'm probably listening to a lot more music from when I was younger. I don't want to call it old music. I'd prefer to say it's music from when I was younger.
Potato, patata.
But see, my opinion of the music I listen to is that the music from the late 80s and the 90s was the best music. But in thinking about this in this context, I think it has more to do with the fact that in the mid to late 80s and early 90s, That's when I'd become self-sufficient.
Hmm.
I'd moved out.
Hmm.
I was single,
Hmm.
more importantly.
Yeah.
Not that being married's a bad
Oh, no,
thing.
no, no, no. That's fine. Yeah, I concur.
Best
Yes, I concur.
best
I love you,
best
honey.
decision I've ever made was to get married.
Your wife doesn't listen to the show. You're safe. Mine does though, so I gotta keep up appearances.
But that's I was care. I didn't have a care in the world. I didn't realize it at the time, but compared to now. But all those songs. When I make playlists on my music app,
Mm.
I find myself making the same playlists I made when I made mixtapes,
Mm.
which are long gone now.
Yeah.
But when I made mixtapes back in the day, it's just about putting me in those places where I was then.
Oh, at the risk of changing the subject, I'll make this quick. I promise we won't get too sidetracked. I heard recently on a talk show that most people have their musical taste sort of locked in, for lack of a better term, around age 25, 26, 27. We'll see, for me and you, that would have been 1992, 93, 94, thereabout. And so, yeah, that's what we're drawing. And that's probably true of most people. You're more susceptible to being open to new music until about that age, and then you start, and we've talked about that in previous shows, you get to a point in life where nothing seems to fit your taste. You crave new music, but you can't seem to find anything that matches the pattern, style,
Right.
that you're unconsciously locked into.
Now that you say that, that makes perfect sense.
But I
It really does.
digress. I mean, like I said, I didn't mean change the subject. I just thought that was relevant to that particular point.
Not only that, I think people dress in a style for the rest of their lives, essentially based on how they dressed at that age. There are a couple subtle little changes in how clothes are made,
Yeah.
like cuts of jeans and things like that. But for the most part, when you're the most comfortable and you're picking out your own clothes, possibly for the first time, that's essentially how you're going to dress the rest of your life. Maybe.
Men
Yeah.
men comb their hair a certain way about age 20, 21, and as a general rule, they comb it that way the rest of their life. Women they don't do that stuff, but for some reason guys do. Guys kind of lock it in place. But again, we digress.
So back to what I was considering were the best years of my life.
Yeah.
As H.I. McDonough said in Raising Arizona, those were the happy days, the salad days, as they say. But in the New York Times article, there's some interesting studies and some interesting results of those studies more specifically. And something that jumped out at me was the section where he talked about how nostalgia actually made people feel physically warmer.
Yes, that Times article was very interesting. And folks, we'll have a link to it, of course, in the show notes. You ought to check it out. It's a little lengthy, but it's interesting. It's a good read. The study referenced in the article mentions that the leader of the study found people were more likely to feel nostalgia on colder days and warmer days. People in a cool room were more likely to nostalgize than people in warmer rooms. I mean, if that's the case, I ought to live in nostalgia all the time with all the Eskimos I work with. They keep that dang office 65 degrees all the time. But I digress.
Yeah, they said if they played hit songs for the past for some people and let them read the lyrics to their favorite songs, they actually said that they felt loved and that life is worth living also.
That's a pretty powerful thing. If something as simple as hearing a song lyric can elicit that strong an emotion. But of course, obviously it does. Look at advertising. How much of advertising plays upon our feelings of nostalgia? I mean, for crying out loud, they've got Vanilla Ice selling us macaroni and cheese in commercials now. That we're so longing for the days of Ice baby.
Thankfully, that song doesn't fall into my lexicon of songs that take me back to good places.
You and me both, brother.
But
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's something wrong with it. Yeah, that article in the Atlantic that you sent to me, and again, folks, we'll put that in the show notes too, that talked about how much the advertising industry business uses nostalgia to draw us into products. Use the term falstalgia, which I thought was trippy. The authors of the article used that term to reference an ad creating nostalgia for something that may not actually exist, reproducing, using Vanilla Ice to sell macaroni and cheese, pulling some obscure sitcom actor from 30 years ago that we may or may not ever have any conscious desire to see again, and using that person in an ad, and oh, I remember so and so and so. So that's what nostalgia comes from, which I think is pretty appropriate. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we see in advertising that once we see it, yeah, I remember, but we never would have thought about it otherwise.
Right, I can see that. There's a ad campaign. What was it? A commercial of some sort that had the cast of Full House all back together again. Does that ring a bell to you?
I remember seeing a Yahoo headline or something about it, but I don't think I've seen the ad.
I think the feedback was strong enough that they're actually bringing the show back, and it is going to be called Fuller House.
My word. Well, John Stamos needs work now, so.
He does. I think they all could use a little, to be honest with you.
I bet the Olsen twins probably cost a little bit more now.
I wonder how they're going to like sharing screen time now. Or splitting screen time, I should say. Well, you scan down Facebook today and think about those polls they have, or tests where they say which Gilligan's Island character.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've honestly never done one of those.
Thankfully, I haven't either.
But I know some folks who have.
But that's what that's about. That they want you to.
Exactly.
This is a perfect example. Gilligan's Island popped in my head. And I remembered when we first got rid of satellite and I got the digital antenna, there's a classic TV show station. Actually, there's two of them that I enjoy watching. But Gilligan's Island was coming on late that afternoon. And for whatever, I'm not sure if Gilligan's Island has been off the air for whatever reason for a long time, but it just doesn't seem like it's on as much as it was when we were kids. And like I'm sure TV Land or...
I don't know, but I'm wondering if TV Land doesn't have exclusive rights to it these days.
That's possible.
I'm thinking out loud. I have no way of knowing that. I'm just theorizing.
And the way they rotate shows, I'm sure they pull it from time to time for a period of time. But I have fond memories of watching that show as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
So I gathered the family around. My wife, obviously she knows about it. But I gathered the kids around. I said, kids, I want you to watch this show. This is fantastic. And they were excited. They were like, oh, man, what are we going to watch now? This is going to be good. And I turned it on, and here comes Gilligan's Island on, and I'm going, man, this is great. And I looked at them, and they were all looking blank-faced at the TV, going, are you serious?
I knew where this was going. That never works out well when you try to introduce, in quotes, something that you love to kids, whether they're your own kids or anybody else's kids. That never goes well.
Of course, and within a couple minutes, they had all, one by one, slowly snuck out.
Wandered off.
And I'm sitting there watching this TV show, and to be honest, after a while, I looked at it and said, you know what? This show's kind of stupid. Not very funny. So much for my great memories of Gilligan's Island.
Oh, but the memories of feeling stupid were so pleasant.
Well, like some things were simpler back then, kids, including the television watching public. I mentioned the playlists I create on my music app. This article mentions actually that Spotify uses strategically placed ads of suggestions of music based on the age of the user. And that is not necessarily music that the person of that age now might enjoy, but the music they might have enjoyed when they were younger.
Yeah.
So that's a creative use of nostalgia right there.
Well, these services have your sign-up data, and I don't specifically remember if Spotify asks for your date of birth, but if they do, then they've got your age, and algorithmically they can deduce these tracks were released in such and such time frame, and at that time in such time frame, this listener was a teenager and therefore may be interested, and so I can see that happening.
Sure.
Might be a little bit creepy, but I can see it happening.
A friend of mine from Orangeburg, he moved to Nashville to go into the music business, and he was in the road band for one of the bigger country artists, but he stopped doing that to help start a Journey tribute band.
Oh.
And just a year ago, they have absolutely exploded. And they travel nationally now, and it's a really big deal. But even though you see older bands still touring in smaller circuits.
Oh yeah,
people will just go see tribute bands.
Yeah. Well, we keep coming back to the link between music and nostalgia, and I mean, I don't think either one of us intended that to be the meat of this show, but it just we keep seeming to come back to it. But you're right. I mean, look at how much of the current musical landscape is dependent on our generation's nostalgia. I mean, us as mid to late 40s, so many acts from the 70s, 80s, and 90s continue to tour successfully without producing much, if any, current content, because their fans will pay to come experience the music of our youth. Heavy metal acts from that time, the Kiss cruise and the Monsters of Rock cruise, which I've actually thought about doing, to tell you the truth. And what these tours that Billy Joel and Elton John do every couple of years. I mean, God, Billy Joel actively says he's not doing any more new music. He says he's tapped out, and I don't think Elton John's done anything new in Lord knows how long. But yet they make millions doing these dual bill shows, playing back catalog. Van Halen's getting ready to go on tour, and they don't have new music to promote. It's strictly to sell tickets, which is fine. I mean, we've also said before that the music industry is about the performance now, not the recording. But
Right.
but it's indicative of how the music industry has realized that there's so much money to be made from our nostalgia, and as we've talked about before, with revenues from recorded music in all forms plummeting, and touring and merchandising being where the money is, that these acts that might not would get radio airplay because they're so quote unquote old, they can still make gobs touring because people paid the money to relive the good old days.
And those dollars aren't doing anything but going up.
Amen to that. Well, all this got started with you mentioning the Carole King record, bringing about such wistful melancholia. Did you just stumble across that in a closet accidentally? Did you go looking for it? Do you have more like it buried in there somewhere that might keep you in the wistful thinking mood?
Yeah, actually, as a matter of fact, I did. It was I keep all my albums in one box, and this is my first day off in a while, and I just decided to go through that box and just kind of remember what all the old albums I had in there. So, and I know you've got plenty more closets to go through. You think you'll probably run across something here or there to
I'm sure. I've still got a few closets and such to weed out. I may end up a gibbering manic depressive by the time it's all said and done. Some of the things I'm finding. If I make it to the new house without being committed to a mental ward, I can probably start working on some new happier memories that I can then get wistful all over if I make it to the old folks' home in 30 more years. Folks, what is it that makes you wistful and reminiscent of the old days? What things get you all thinking about the happier times, the younger times? Email us. You know how to find us. unclearthinking@gmail.com. We check it all.
Yeah, please let us know.
Leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. And after you leave the 5 stars, don't bother saying how wonderful you think we are. Tell us what makes you wistful, what makes you melancholy, what you're nostalgic. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/unclearthinking. Tell us there. Google Plus, we're there too, same thing.
We're everywhere. There's no excuse for not being able to find us on the internet.
My friend, doing this show, talking with you for a while, I'm in good enough spirits now. I'm going to get up and I'm going to attack these closets again. I think I'm in the right frame of mind that no matter what I find in these closets, I probably won't be slowed down too terribly much by any oncoming waves of nostalgia. I think I'll be fine.
Yeah, do that. It'll make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
That's the feeling I want, warm and